You ever wish you could just make your favorite apps talk to each other? Or maybe add a new feature to a tool you use all the time? Well, that's the whole idea behind open platforms. And the magic that makes it all happen is something called an API. Today, we're going to dive into the entire life story of these incredibly important building blocks. So let's start with a big question. What if the software you use wasn't just some locked down black box? What if you could actually build on top of it, extend it, and make it your own? It's a simple idea, but it totally changes how we think about technology. So, what do we really mean by an open platform? Well, it all boils down to 5 key things you as a developer get to do. You can interact with it programmatically, you can react to things happening inside it, you can extend it with new functionality, you can even replace the parts you don't like, and you can customize it to work exactly the way you need it to. It's all about giving you the power to shape your tools. And how do we unlock all this potential? We do it with APIs, Application Programming Interfaces. You can think of them as the keys, the contracts, the universal language that lets all these different pieces of software actually talk to one another. They're what makes this whole open ecosystem possible. So here's our game plan. We're going to follow the complete life story of an API. First up, we'll see how it's born. Then, we'll look at the public contract it makes with its users. After that, we'll see how it can evolve and change safely. And finally, we'll talk about how an API has a graceful retirement. All right, so every single API has to start somewhere. And this first phase, it's all about growing up, really. It moves from being this private little experiment to a full-on public promise that people can rely on. The easiest way to think about this is to imagine we're building a new subway line. The alpha stage, that's when the tunnels are being dug. It's messy, it's private, it's unstable. You're definitely not letting passengers on yet. Then you get to beta. This is like a developer preview. You let a few trusted people ride the train to give you feedback. And finally, you have GA, or general availability. This is the grand opening. The service is stable, it's mature, and it's open for business. Now, this is where it gets really serious. Look at the level of commitment here. When an API is in beta, you're promising about 30 days notice before you break something. But once you hit GA, whoa, that commitment jumps to a full 6 months. That's not a small step. That's a massive leap of responsibility. You're basically telling the entire world, hey, you can build your business on this. We've got your back. So once that API hits general availability, it's no longer the Wild West. It's governed by a really strict set of rules. This is the public contract, and it's all about building trust. And this quote just nails it. A public API is a promise. It's a contract. Real people, real developers are out there writing code and building entire businesses with the expectation that your API is going to keep working the way you said it would. If you break that trust, there are real consequences. Okay, so the core idea here is something called backward compatibility. It's super important. On the left, you've got stuff you can do. You can add new methods, new services, new optional fields. That's all fine, because existing code will just ignore it. But the list on the right, that's the danger zone. If you remove or rename a field or change what type of data it is, you're going to cause someone's application to crash. And you have to remember, renaming a field is really just a remove and add in disguise. It's just as breaking. But look, we all know the world doesn't stand still. Products have to evolve, and so do their APIs. So how do you make changes without breaking that public contract we just talked about? Well, thankfully, there are safe ways to do it. And this is a perfect example of that process. Let's say you absolutely have to rename a field. You don't just change it, no way. First, you add the new field, and you make sure your system can handle both the old one and the new one at the same time. Then the hard work starts. You have to migrate all your users over to the new field. Only after that's done can you mark the old one as deprecated. And then, after a really long waiting period, you can finally remove it. It's a very careful, deliberate dance. So what about past mistakes? Sometimes you have an API that had to violate the rules for a good reason, like staying consistent with an old system. To stop those exceptions from becoming bad habits, you use this clever little comment, / not precedent. It's basically a big warning sign for other developers that says, hey, we know this is weird, there's a reason for it, but please, do not copy this pattern. It's a great way of containing a mistake while preserving that historical context. Everything has a life cycle, and APIs are no exception. But ending an API's life has to be handled with just as much care and planning as creating it. And that's where deprecation comes in. For GA API, this isn't a quick thing. It's a structured 6-month journey. It all kicks off with a public announcement. Then, for the next 5 months, the API owner is actively tracking who's still using it and helping them migrate. At that 6-month mark, the API hits its official end of life and disappears from the docs. And only after that, when the coast is clear, is the traffic mapping removed and the code is finally laid to rest. The whole process is built on respect for your users. And this is a really critical point. Deprecating an API is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. The owner is still on the hook. If a bug is found during that 6-month deprecation period, you still have to fix it. That contract with your user is valid until the very last day. So you see, while any single API has a beginning, a middle, and an end, the open platform that it was a part of just keeps growing and evolving. Every API lifecycle enables countless new ideas and creations to be built. So the real question is, now that you know how these powerful tools work, what are you going to build next?